Yeah, good to know. That's fine. Okay, well, thanks very much for doing this. Could I take you back to maybe when you first met Thomas and Robert? I think generally it seems to be suggested that it was at a TG gig, kind of mid-78 period. Do you, would you have remembered that particular time? Or
I can't remember the actual first time we met Robert and Thomas, but I seem to recall that they sent us a demo. So they might have seen us at a gig, then spoken to us, and then sent a demo in to Othello Street or Beck Road, and then we arranged to meet up with them. And that's how it first started. But we didn't, they weren't kind of part of our circle, were they? They weren't
Not so
around
much,
us all
no.
the time. Whereas we had quite a busy house at Beck Road,
Yeah.
and the studio, because we used to have Mark Perry coming around, people like that, to practice with Alex. But Robert and Thomas were pretty quiet. They weren't the norm to what the usual people were that hung around with us.
Mm.
And they weren't pushy either, which was something new for us.
Yeah.
So when they asked if, when we said, oh, we listened to the demo and we really liked it, because it was so different to what we were doing in lots of ways. And so we arranged to meet them and said, you know, would you like to do an album with Industrial Records? Because that appealed to us, because we sort of like, we'll play being a real record company. We'll have other people on our roster, you know. And
Actually, that was the first album,
yeah,
non-TG album that we did.
proper album was theirs.
Yeah.
And it was so non-TG, but still really like nothing else.
Mm.
That's one of the reasons that we offered it. So I think, did they come and use ask to use the equipment first, or did we sign the contract first? I can't remember which was which.
No, I think we signed the contract because we had this whole thing where we took them out for dinner to this Soho restaurant and got them to sign the contract. Trying to be like
that was part of being like a real label.
Like a real record label. And that happened. And then we used to rent gear through Sleazy, through Britannia Row, Pink Floyd's hire company. So we got a package from them, which was, I think it was like an 8-track recorder and a mixer and maybe a 2-track recorder to mix down onto. I think maybe there was a Space Echo or something. But they wanted to borrow all the TG gear and they wanted to record in the TG studio. But part of the thing was that we liked the demos so much as they were. We wanted that as a proper release, as a proper recording. So we said, no, you know, we'll get this gear for you. We'll come and set it up. Well, I would set it up. And we want you just to do your demo, but do it properly for the album. And I think they were a bit disappointed, weren't they?
Yeah, I think they thought we were being a bit mean, but the whole point of that not lending them our gear was that they retained their own sound. And it didn't send them off somewhere that we thought would be different to what we really sort of recognised as interesting.
Because it was quite unique what they were doing.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't, I mean, because we had cabs, we'd already released cabs, cassettes and
Clock DVA.
Clock DVA, people like that. And they didn't sound like any of those. Daniel Miller had a really good quote. He said they were like, electronic music that they were doing was like the real punk music. Because it did have a punk element, some of the stuff they were doing. I know they were using synthesizers and wasps. And now I think they had a guitar as well, didn't they?
Yeah,
But
punk in the real sense of the word.
Yeah, it
Not
really
in the rock
was.
and
It was
roll
raw,
sense,
and
yeah.
it wasn't based on rock and roll really. And we really liked that whole element, that ethic as well, their work ethic.
But I don't think they're up for partying and things like that. So I think that could have been one of the reasons that we didn't see so much of them, because our sort of like real busy time was in the evenings, wasn't it? Going late. And Robert obviously couldn't do that. And he was pretty shy, wasn't he?
He was. I remember we went to his flat, didn't we?
Yeah.
To set all the gear up.
Yeah.
Well, we went there a few times, but when we got all the gear, we had to go up all these flights of stairs and set all the gear up in his living room, basically, just overlooking London. It was quite nice. And then we just left them. I think I showed them the basics of how to record.
Bye.
But we didn't want to get involved, you know, we just wanted to hear the finished result.
Yeah, let us know how you get on. I mean, we didn't even, you didn't even demonstrate how to do certain things, because we thought the whole point of this is discovery, and they could probably discover something quite different to what we would with the same gear. So it was a bit like leaving them to play, which was for us the best thing.
And I don't
to
think
do.
we gave them a time limit, did we?
No.
We just
No.
said get on with it.
Let us know when you finish. We'll come get the gear.
And I think they wanted the gristalizer from us, but that was too distinctive to TG, and we thought that's the last thing we could give them, really.
Well, it's the last thing that they needed, to be honest.
Yeah, they didn't need it, no,
No.
they didn't. And they were using these WASP synthesizers, which at the time, I mean, I only just heard about them, and no one else was using them, especially for that sort of thing. They were quite cutting edge, really, I suppose, having those. And they had I think they had a little spider sequencer as well to run. But they were doing everything, just with the voice. I think Thomas had a guitar, did he? I can't remember. One of them had a guitar, and just these two synthesizers. But they were doing percussion, synth sounds, effects, everything, just with these synthesizers. And it was quite amazing. That's partly why we wanted them to do it, because it was pretty groundbreaking stuff. So we said, just get on with it. And then, having seen that, when I set them up and saw how they were doing it, I went out and bought a WASP myself. Thinking about it now, I think they might have been quite intimidated by the whole process. I know they sent us a demo tape, but then when we actually said yes, you know, let's meet up, and then we liked it enough to want to release it. And then taking them out for dinner and doing the whole record company thing. I mean, we were doing it as a quite tongue-in-cheek thing, really. But I think they were probably quite intimidated by it. But I mean, we were serious about doing it. It was going to be our first non-TG release on Industrial Records, so it was quite a big deal for us as well. And it was, yeah, it was funny, wasn't it? That whole thing in Soho, taking them down there. We didn't get them to sign in blood, did we?
No, that was Monty.
Yeah, it was Monty, wasn't it? Yeah.
I was going to ask you that, because obviously Robert and Thomas, they weren't from the kind of London art school scene. Did you make a kind of connection with them? They were kind of older than some of the other people that were around. They'd been through that.
I think they were our age.
Counterculture
They were
stuff.
our age.
They were older than
Yeah,
Cabs and
yeah.
things, weren't they? But they were our age, yeah.
I never really.
It was a northern thing that was a connection.
No, I never even thought about that.
The
They were
fact
just
that they were
interesting
Scottish
people.
was nice, because
Yeah.
we were friends with Sandy Robertson and Alex Ferguson, and they were Scottish, and they were some of our closest friends. And there's something about the Scottish mentality, or just Scots people, that we really liked, didn't we?
Yeah.
And that helped a lot. That they were very warm, even though they were quite naive and probably a bit intimidated by the whole TG thing. We got on quite well with them. In a way, I wish I'd got to know them better, but we had such a lot going on in our lives apart from that.
I'd say that they're two of very few very honest and genuine people in that scene. To be honest, yeah, they were. Weren't
They were very genuine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had there was no gameplay at all, and there was a lot of that going on at that time.
There was no other agenda, you know.
No, there was quite a lot of
It was
bullshitters.
the music and what they were doing. That's what they were really into, and we could see that and hear that.
Yeah.
Also, apart from Thomas and Robert together, I suppose you were the kind of catalyst for Daniel Miller and Robert working together, and that kind of coalesced around that TG gig at the Crypt, where I think he'd asked Daniel to do something, and he didn't want to do it on his own, so he asked Robert to join in, and that's how Robert Rental and The Normal kind of came together.
Right. Well, as we normally don't bother, it's nearly 9 o'clock. Bruce Forsyth's just ending. So, what I'd like to do first, just for a change, in the hope that the atmosphere's a bit more domestic, is introduce ourselves. We're from Gristle.
Well, the Crypt gig was
Yeah,
special in a different way.
It was full on for us. It's funny, I can remember seeing them there.
Yeah.
I can remember seeing the three of them together, and they all seemed to get on really fine. It was great, but it was special for us in a different way, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, the gig anyway, we were sort of, we'd hired these bodyguards, hadn't we?
Yes.
that were bodyguards for, who's that? Some famous female singer. I can't remember who it was.
Whitney Houston or something.
Whitney Houston or Mariah Carey, which wouldn't have been then, but someone like that, of that kind of stature. And we'd heard that they had a free hour or two. And it's just TG's sense of humour. Yeah, let's get, bodyguards on the door, That's something that you're supposed to have at gigs. So we did, didn't we? So we got them in. There was sort of second thoughts about having them in because they were a little bit too efficient about,
who came in and who
came
didn't.
in, who didn't. So we had to have words with them. But that was the night that Jen took his overdose. So we didn't, once, we had Robert and Daniel and people around, but we were also looking at Jen behaving quite oddly. I mean, more odd than he usually did on stage, with the speakers teetering and things.
God knows what Robert thought of and Thomas thought of all that, because that's the first gig they'd ever been to, I think, of ours. I mean, Daniel probably knew what to expect, but I mean, because they seemed quite shy, Robert and Thomas, to us.
Yeah, they were.
And to be thrown in at the deep end like that sort of gig that was so full on and so TG. But something must have clicked with Robert and Daniel, mustn't it? Because they went on to do what they did together.
It was, and also Daniel was pretty quiet.
Yeah.
As well. So their personalities, I think,
they're
matched really well.
quite a good match, actually.
Yeah. Just getting their heads down and doing stuff.
Got a good story from Glenn, actually, Glenn Wallace, about the National Front showing up at that gig.
Did they? I don't remember that.
So.
Wow.
He's got a story about them.
Wow.
Well, he said that your bouncers all deserted and left.
Yeah.
Your control agents.
Right, yeah.
And, so Glenn had to take over.
Well, there was Geordie Vowles and Glenn, wasn't there?
Yeah,
They sort of,
And these skinheads heard TG and just went, fuck this, we're leaving.
That's good.
No, he never told us that.
No.
No, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, there's some dodgy geezers around then, because it was Terry the Pill who used to do our fly posting. He was like a gangster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was funny times.
I just remember a sea of people and a lot of disruption on the edges of that gig. And then weird stuff going on stage.
Jen was climbing on the PA, wasn't he?
Yeah,
it was all rocking.
And it was threatening to fall on people's heads and stuff. And Sleeves was sort of eyebrowing us, like, what's going on, and we're shrugging our shoulders,
Let's carry on.
Just let's get the gig done, shall we?
Given the myriad of independent releases that were coming out at that time, what was it about Thomas and Robert's music that kind of stood out from the rest for you?
Because it was so different. I mean, now, it sounds weird saying that, but it was very different at the time. And that album was like an album of two halves, really. Because you got one half that was sort of drony ambient, and the other half that was songs and sort of had that punk ethic, but with electronics. And no one else was really doing that sort of thing, and to that extent as well, where you had two different things going on, where it wasn't just one sound that they stuck to. That they were quite varied in what they did, and I really like that they had that, that they could do that.
And it was considered, wasn't it? It wasn't a sort of thrashed out thing.
No.
That's what I got. I mean, TG were more like that. Like we just sort of like engaged with the sound and then just rolled with it. Whereas it seemed to me that when they got in the studio together, they kind of worked the sound more than we did. Whereas we let the sound lead where it wanted to and then jumped in. So it was a very different approach to music as well that we recognised, that got a completely different result to what we were getting, which was...
They hadn't pre-composed any of that stuff, so it was quite immediate and improvisational in a way. Just think that.
Yeah, but it was. I don't know. Their approach was very. I could tell by listening to it that it had gone somewhere by a very different connection to what we did when we put music together, and I think that was their personalities.
Also, they didn't use a drum kit or a drum machine.
No. So that wasn't driving it.
No, they did everything by hand, which was amazing when you think about it. And I think that influenced the sound quite a lot, because they didn't sound like everyone else that was using either a drummer or a drum machine.
Well, if you think about it, if you're on the fly and you're using a drum machine, you haven't got any hands to do anything else. So that's why the music sounds quite different, because you've got one thing coming and then other things. It's more empty than TG was. And just the way that it was composed and played. I think that had a lot to do with that.
Do you think because of that, is that the reason why it sounds kind of timeless, or it's still got a relevance to people today who still kind of almost revere that album in some ways? That is it because of the way it was recorded and the situation in which it was recorded?
Yeah, it could be, because I mean, a lot of people work with sound in a similar way, but not in such a limited way that it affects what you can get within a time limit. So to create a sound that sort of moves the way it did, that the way that ended up being is totally because of the situation they were in with equipment and what they could use, how they could use it, and then like you said, a 2-week time limit to get it down on tape so we can get the rental equipment back without penalties.
It was quite perverse of us, really, that we didn't want to give them any more equipment than the basics that they needed to get it recorded, because they wanted to come into the TG studio and use all our gear.
I mean, it was a bit like us experimenting with them, wasn't it?
It was.
If you think about it.
It was a bit wicked, really.
We were setting them a task
Yeah, we were.
to see what they could do with the limited amount of time and
Yeah.
equipment.
With the
but
least
we-
amount possible.
Yeah, but we had every confidence in them because they'd already done that once with less. So if we gave them more and a better way of recording it, then we thought that would be great, like to see what would happen if you did that. And they came up with a great album.
And it is sort of timeless, that album. It's hard to date it when you listen to it. I mean, I hadn't listened to it for ages, and then when I knew we were going to do this, I listened to it again. And I thought you'd be hard-pressed to say when that was actually recorded. I mean, you could say it was recorded like 20 years ago, but you couldn't say it was recorded in the 70s or even the 80s. And it stands up really well, I think, nowadays. It really does.
Rolling? Yeah, well, I think we've covered most things, but I suppose it's just if you had any other kind of memories or recollections of Thomas and Bob at all.
I just wish at the time I'd got to know them a bit better, but it wasn't to be because we had so much else going on. But yeah,
I think that time, I think I was just about leaving Beck Road. So it was a really weird time. And I was out all day. So if they came through in the day to visit at Beck Road or Martello Street, I wouldn't have been there. You were working. So Chris wouldn't have been there. Sleazy would be hypnosis. So I suppose Jen would be the only one that they came through to speak with.
They probably spoke to him more than any of us, yeah.
That's just because Bob and Hill had Dylan by that point. So
Yeah, of
they wouldn't have been
course.
out at night.
No,
Yeah,
exactly, yeah. Yeah, that's a point. You forget all those little sort of basic things. So you focus in on the music and studio and what was going on, but life was going on as well,
I'm sort of surprised we don't hear Dylan on the bridge.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, why did he?
Because he would have been there,
Yeah,
yeah.
he should have sneaked him in.
Yeah.
He's in one of the demos, isn't he? He's on one of Bob's. It's just a tiny little snatch
Yeah.
of Dylan talking. Was there ever any suggestion that you might do a further recording with them? With the Industrial
TG was
Records?
imploding sort of, the next following year. Even that year it was pretty bad. And TG was always teetering on the edge of collapse. So if TG was, Industrial was, it wouldn't have happened.
Was it Dylan that was at the Filmmakers Co-op?
It was Dylan that was at the Filmmakers Co-op, yes.
Yeah, when the Slits ran at the stage.
There was an incident at the Filmmakers Co-op. We did a benefit there, and Robert came along.
And Glenn was there. I remember Glenn was there. And
Geordie Vowles.
Geordie Vowles and everybody. And the Slits disrupted the gig. And then one of them came up, was swinging Dylan round by his arms, but not in a very nice way. She was drunk. So someone had to stop them doing that, and then it all
Just kicked off.
hell kicked off, really. I think Glenn was punched or something,
He was,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
So there was a big chairs flying and fists flying and
Yeah.
all sorts. But yeah, I remember
Typical TG gig.
he was only about, was he about 3 or 4 or something?
Yeah, he seemed quite, he would have been quite young then,
Yeah.
That's where Daniel said that him and Bob met, actually. Was it the...
The Filmmakers Co-op.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be
okay.
the gig with it, initialised
yeah.
Daniel's
First,
meeting with
Yeah.
him. Yeah. Well, it
I
ended
didn't
in...
realise that Dylan was at these gigs as well.
You could,
Yeah.
double check with Glenn or someone, he might remember.
I remember Glenn stepped in.
Yeah, he was quite protective.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just that's all wrong. You can't do that, you know.
Mm.
Because Glenn used to he took on the role of roadie, although he was quite small and slight then. He couldn't have been a bouncer, but he was okay, you know. He had attitude, and so he stepped in.
He wasn't afraid to get stuck in, was he?
No. And it was at the front at the stage because I saw it from where I was, and it wasn't good. You shouldn't be swinging a little kid around in that situation.